It's now September, and Alien Rogue Incursion Part 1 Evolved Edition is landing at the end of this month. Thanks to developer Survios, Aaron, aka Hicks, and I were able to give this non-VR version of the game a test drive a bit early. I thoroughly enjoyed the release version of Alien Rogue Incursion on PlayStation VR 2 late last year, but I was still quite excited to experience the journey of Zula Hendrix and Davis 01 in a standard format. For those of you who haven't had the chance to explore the dark hallways of Castor's Cradle on Verdan, I'm excited for you. Though VR has made significant strides in becoming more mainstream, it remains a less accessible format in the world of gaming. Survios has touted this version as having increased xenomorph aggression and enhanced visuals, and I found that to be the case. Hopefully this preview delivers a glimpse at what's in store.
Ever since I first put my body through the ordeal of Alien Isolation's Mother VR mod, I'd been craving an Alien game built from the ground up for VR to test my heart rate and blood pressure, and Survios delivered on that with Alien Rogue Incursion. I absolutely adore that game. However, I also know I was fortunate to be able to pick up a MetaQuest 3 to play it, and I was never blind to my fellow fans out there without VR hardware asking for a flat screen version of the game. Non-VR ports of VR games are certainly not unheard of, and I was grateful to see Survios answer the call with the announcement of Alien Rogue Incursion Evolved Edition. I love any reason that allows more Alien fans to experience Alex White's narrative work. But I thought the base game was so well built for VR, it was so tactile and involved, that I was worried that the Evolved Edition would not hit the same way. So, let's dive in, shall we? I think ultimately my concerns were unnecessary. While obviously not the same as reaching out physically yourself, the Evolved Edition translated moments of interactivity by making them more involved from a controller input point of view. This valve wheel I've just picked up from within the murky depths of an alien hive that I need to crank open a door. It's not a simple tap a button and we're done. It's multiple presses of both triggers. It keeps a slower and still pulse racing pace to your activities while you're still conscious of the aliens lurking around you. Survios has made other creative tweaks like your perspective focus shifting to your weaponry when reloading, leaving the background out of focus, removing a large part of the situational awareness, which ups the tension and that heart rate. Moments of free view in the VR version have become curated POV cinematics that ensure you're able to get a good view of the money shot that's about to occur. It's a small but effective choice that keeps the game very focused on your own intimate perspective. It still works as beautifully when you're fighting off a facehugger slowly crawling along your legs, or when your face is inches away from a newly birthed chestburster.
One of the first things I'm wondering about when I pick up a new first-person survival horror title, I was tempted to call this a first-person shooter, is how it feels. And I'm pleased to say I think the switch from VR to non-VR has translated really nicely. Navigating the environment, aiming your weapon, and gunfights with enemies all feel quite nice. Even most VR-designed elements such as your motion tracker and data tablet function well. You can quick select these essential items as well as your flashlight and stims using the D-pad. You can select your weapons using either a weapon wheel or a tap of the shoulder button to quick swap between them. As Hicks mentioned, the game also takes advantage of DualSense controller features. The adaptive trigger effects and dynamic haptics make this still an immersive experience even outside of VR. The Evolved Edition also supports the DualSense's motion controls. There are a few options with it here, so if you want to turn it on for all aiming or only just specific actions, you can do so. Personally, I prefer to have it off entirely. One of my favorite things to do in the VR version was to just pick up and examine random objects strewn about. You can still pick up nearly any item and either drop it or throw it, if you feel so inclined. You won't really find items hidden within boxes on a rack like you did before though. It's nice that they still included this, if anything to see the physics at play in Unreal Engine 5, but I found myself trying all I could to have Zula put on a hat, alas. VR games essentially render an image for each eye in a headset, sometimes limiting the graphical fidelity of a game. With that constraint lifted, Alien Rogue Incursion Evolved Edition looks very nice in Unreal Engine 5. The game runs in 60 frames per second and looks fantastic on base hardware PS5, which is what we both played this preview on. The game also supports PS5 Pro enhancements, and we imagine there will be even more graphics options for PC. In my experience, this is one of the best looking Alien games there is, and the Gemini Exoplanet Solutions facility is filled with atmosphere. The lighting, the steam venting from pipes, the eerie textures of the Xenomorph hive, it all makes for a solid presentation that's sure to please fans.
My first playthrough of the original version of Rogue Incursion was on a severely underspec'd PC, that it was a miracle that the game even ran. My next time was on the admittedly not as good as I would have liked it to have been MetaQuest 3 version. Regardless though, I enjoyed the actual gameplay and the narrative of the game so much that it wasn't a deal breaker for me. I'd seen footage of the game running on PSVR 2, but actually getting to play the Evolved Edition on the PS5 was a huge visual treat for me. It was a huge improvement over my previous experiences playing the game. A nice behavioural change that I noticed in the aliens was the way they seemed quicker to retreat when injured, often with another alien joining the foray and forcing your attention to shift to it while its injured hive brother repositioned and joined the attack again.
The Xenomorphs do seem to be more aggressive here, which was kind of needed as the game kindly granted a bit of leeway with the more physically involved shooting and reloading in the VR space. Now with the game operating more like a typical first-person shooter, the pace is faster here, especially when engaging against multiple aliens at once. Is it a drastic difference? Not that I could tell, but it is noticeable and makes for intense battles. We played through this preview in normal difficulty, so I'm curious to see if or how the behavior will change should we crank that setting up.
While I think Survios did an amazing job at translating the involved and intimate sensation that I think makes virtual reality as a platform stand out so much, there was one element that I think didn't quite hit that mark in the Evolved Edition, and that was the picking up of items or opening of doors. I know it's a holdover from the original VR game, but the way that Zula would just reach out and swipe out at items just doesn't feel right in the same way that Survios translated the other immersive aspects of VR to flat screen. In the VR version, you are physically reaching out yourself in the real world. You aren't doing that here, and it just looks a little too comical in the Evolved Edition. I'd have liked to have seen some adjustment to that to see Zula grabbing items rather than swiping at them. I also found it mildly bothersome that any time I engaged with the terminal or an electrical junction box, that my torch was automatically turned off. It wasn't a big issue, but in some of the darker locations it did start to annoy me.
It did take me a bit to get used to the electrical junction box minigame, but once I did, I had no issue. The motion controls I mentioned earlier include an option for just these sequences, so that might make things more intuitive for some players. Though overall I feel like this transfer feels and looks great, some of the nice touches of the VR version are lost. For example, one moment in the original game saw you physically wipe the blood off the screen to see it. Zula still comments about her not being able to see the screen, but the blood is a static, transparent effect here, without interaction. You can't set the motion tracker down anymore when you're completing tasks either, though you can set it to ping even when it's holstered. I'm glad we're getting a non-VR version of Alien Rogue Incursion. As much as I love playing the game in VR, sometimes I'm just not in the mood to strap on a headset and play a game like that. It's great to have the option, which is why we were asking about it prior to the main game's release. I think the modern Resident Evil titles have been a real model for having compelling experiences both in VR and outside of it, and I really hope once we eventually see Rogue Incursion Part 2, that both experiences are just options for a singular release.
We'd like to thank Survios for giving us the opportunity to play through the first couple of missions of Alien Rogue Incursion Evolved Edition. I think the team really did a fantastic job at translating the original game into flat screen. I was genuinely impressed that the developers were able and willing to give Alien fans without VR hardware an option to experience the game.
I must give thanks to Survios as well, who have been kind enough to host us at their development offices multiple times and sit down with me at SDCC 2024 to answer my questions. We'll be having them on the podcast soon, so I'm excited to chat more with them. It was great to try this version of the game a bit early, and Evolved Edition seems like it'll be a compelling survival horror experience for any Alien fan or any gamers who like horror. If you haven't had a chance to play through this in VR, or you just like the option to experience the game outside of it, I really recommend Evolved Edition from what I've played so far.
For Alien vs. Predator Galaxy, this is Corporal Hicks.
And Ridgetop?
Signing off.